son-in-law sent me a camera and film that they've got that is not that challenging to work. And it's just a camera and a computer. And if you can go to Koi, some of you guys, on YouTube, you can look at that. Really good picture. And I think it's like $1,600. I'll see if he can send me that link and I'll send you that camera.
That's okay, you got to talk. Oh, okay, I thought I was late. Okay. So is this today? Oh, wonderful. Joshua, since I was going to say it anyway. We're having Joshua stuff, watching protected. Good morning, Joshua.
Every praise is to our God. Come on, give God a hand praise in this place. Hallelujah.
So this morning, there are many of our people that are home sick, many with COVID. There are many on quarantine, and many that are just afraid to come to church. We've got a lot of people online, and I want you to know this morning that we're praying for you as well. But I want us to pray today
We just sang in worship that he's the way maker, miracle worker. And if we really believe that, then we can go to him and see him work miracles and make the way. We need miracles in our nation. We need miracles physically with this virus. We need miracles with the political system. We need miracles everywhere you turn, and probably in your heart today, in your life. So we can worship him, but we can also go directly to him right now. I just want you to worship him, but I want you to pray with me. Father, in the name of Jesus, we celebrate the fact this morning that you make a way where there seems to be no way. We celebrate the fact this morning that you are the miracle worker. We celebrate the fact today that you can do anything. Nothing is too difficult for you. We ask you this morning to work in the hearts, in the bodies, and the lives of our church family. You see those this morning who are sick in their homes. They're sick, Lord. They're shut in. You see the situation. You see the sickness in our nation. I'm asking you this morning, Lord, to work a miracle. I believe, Lord, that you can stop this. I believe that you can heal those that are sick, and I believe, God, that you can work a miracle. Where it seems there is no way, Lord, you can work quicker than a vaccine. And I'm asking you this morning to do that. And I'm asking you to touch this nation, touch this church, touch this time today, touch us. Just move in this place. Today we need you. God, and every person standing here needs a miracle in their life, needs a way made in their life. Many of them are looking at no way, but you can make a way where there is no way. I'm asking you this morning, Lord, to work some miracles for us today in this house. Holy Spirit, tell him, look at him and tell him this morning, Lord, you're the way maker. You are the way maker. You are the way maker, Lord. Way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. 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 'Cause you are a way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are a way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are a way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Have you ever read the 23rd Psalm? 23rd Psalm, David is taking on the image of a sheep, a lamb, because he knows what it's like to take care of lambs, sheep. And it's as though he's looking at all the other sheep in the region. And I want, next time you read this, I want you to see it like this. But it's as though he's looking at them and says, the Lord is my shepherd. You know, it's kind of like, that's my wife. You know? He said, the Lord is my shepherd. This morning, did you realize what he said? You are the way maker. You are my God. That is who you are. Did you get it? That is who you are. You're my God. I'm going to tell you, you're blessed today. Greater than any worshiper of any other gods in this world. You're worshiping the way maker. The miracle worker. The Lord. bunch of folks watching with us that can't be here in person. And one of them is Josh Stubbs. Josh Stubbs just finished boot camp, basic training, and is in the military, and we miss him on the drums, we miss him on the platform, and glad to have you with us today, Josh. The rest of you may be seated. And all of the rest of you this morning, we're glad to have you with us today, online or in person. We've had a good service this morning in our first service, and the Lord was here, and we're excited about this service and just looking forward to what the Lord is going to do here in this house. One of our guitar players is not able to be with us today because he got married. Yesterday, Friday, Preston and Trish got married, and they're on their honeymoon, and he sent me a text yesterday saying, we're probably not going to be there tomorrow. And he said, we're on a honeymoon. And I'm like, just get off the phone, all right? You know? Then he sent me a text this morning telling everybody, be sure, tell him he miss you. But Preston and Trish got married Friday. We're excited for them. Looking forward to them to getting back. And you know, there's another thing, and they may be watching this morning, but we had a repeat.
How about that? Yes. Okay. I've been hollering at grandkids all weekend, so I probably didn't see this. All right. Oh, hey, Pastor.
You interrupted me. That's not like you.
This is Pastor Appreciation Month. Okay, so it's just about over. But we're getting around to it, see? And Pastor, I ain't gonna start crying, but we appreciate this very much. Miss Carol, would you come here and stand in this, please? Or, well, you can. That's not me. Just. This one, we love y'all very much. And the board and I got together and just wanted to give y'all a giveaway. You need that? You need a giveaway?
Start right now.
Brother Jerry is ready today. We love you very much.
We love you too. We
We
love you all too. We'll give you a COVID hug on the platform, all right? All right, you must sing. Hey, a getaway, I don't know if that means you're trying to get rid of us. Thank you from the bottom of our heart. With your presence, you've shown us you appreciate us, and we appreciate you from the bottom of our heart. Every one of you, we love you to death. And excited about what the Lord is doing in Life Church. Amen. Even though we've got so many scattered in their homes, and does it almost seem like we're going backwards with this thing instead of forward? Because so many of our people, and I had bragged so much about so many of our people, or that none of our people being sick, and then all of a sudden it seems like it's spreading. Not necessarily people getting infected at church, but at home. So our prayers are with you all. We love you all. Thank you, Ronnie, because I know that's unlike you to get up on the platform, and do that. But thank you guys so much, and God bless you. We appreciate you. Okay, where were we? Oh yeah, we had another wedding that happened during our shutdown that most of you did not know, but Terrence and Laura, they were in our first service, and you may or may not have known Terrence and Laura, but they got married back in April and surprised us all with it. We didn't know it until a long time afterwards, but congratulations to you guys too if you're watching. Then 2 weeks from yesterday, we got another wedding that's going to be taking place. Anybody else want to get married? We've got a wedding that'll be happening 2 weeks from yesterday. Tyler and Haley, and we're just excited about that. And all of these weddings and seeing what the Lord is doing, and new grandbabies coming. I got a brand new grandbaby coming on the way, and I'm so excited. Can you tell? This makes number 7. My brother's only got 6, and I'm pulling ahead on 7, and I'm going to beat him. So anyway, we want to welcome you this morning. If you will find your Connect card in the little seat ahead of you, in the little pocket on the seat ahead of you, if you'll fill out this Connect card, put your prayer needs on there. It gives us an opportunity to come along with you and pray with you, and our prayer team will begin praying today for your needs and pray with you throughout the week. So put your needs on there. The ushers will be standing at the door, and you can drop this in the bag on your way out. Also, connect with us on here if you renew your commitment to Christ today, or if you give your life to Christ this morning. We'd like to know about it because we want to come alongside you and pray with you. Also, the ushers will be out there for your tithe and offering. The envelopes are in the seat ahead of you, and you can put it in there. Or Loki is sharing this information online. If you're watching online, there are ways that you can do the Connect card, the prayer card, all of that online, as well as the online giving. Let me remind you, this coming Sunday, next Sunday, a week from today, is the 1st of November. Can you believe that? The 1st of November. And it is our day we've set aside for a time of prayer and fasting, strictly for ourselves, not being selfish, but renewing our commitment to God. So we ask you and encourage you and urge you to do that beginning next Sunday. Then on Tuesday is the 2nd. It's the day that we have set aside for praying and fasting for the church. And I believe that this is a good time to do that for those that are sick especially, and just for our church as a whole in the ministry. But then on day 3, which is on Tuesday, does anybody else know what happens on Tuesday?
Election Day.
Election Day. We're fasting and praying that day for our city, our county, our country, and it's a perfect time to be praying for our nation. Next Sunday we'll tell you more, but we'll be having prayer meetings here in the church on Monday and Tuesday and giving you an opportunity to do that. But I would advise you to begin to pray and fast now, if you've not already done so, for our nation and for this upcoming election and all that is happening through that. But Wednesdays, we are having meetings here at the church. We're having group meetings in the fellowship hall, and we're calling that Thrive. And that is people just coming in and giving their testimony, talking, and it is a growing experience that I think everybody should and really want to be a part of. So come on Wednesday night, 6:30. The children are all on the other side, the children's side, on Wednesday night in Awana. And that's an excellent discipleship program there. So come on and bring your children, your grandchildren with you, and that's a great place for them to be ministered to. And you watch the news, got another storm, 2020. Who knows what's next, right? 2020. Okay, we're in letter 6 of the Greek alphabet. I would advise you to start working on your Hebrew, because we only got so many letters left of the Greek, so we go to Hebrew then. So I say all of that to say this: if the weather just absolutely gets bad in this area, we may have to postpone the service. We're not planning on that, but stay in touch with our Facebook site and call us if you've got questions, because we don't want you out if the weather is bad. Hopefully it'll be nothing but rain. So, all right. Is that all you need to know? All right. I want to get into the Word this morning. We've been talking about authenticity, just being authentic, being real. I've asked you to write your story. I'd love to see some of those stories of how you came to know the Lord, of the things that the Lord has done in your life, your salvation experience, your Jesus experience. We live in a day where, everybody's into social media and all of the high-tech stuff that's going on, and very few people are writing. I want you to write your story. And I want you to write it and let it lay there and think about it a while and then go back, because the Lord will bring things to your remembrance to add into that story. Why? Because I want you to have it to where you can go back and look at it. And it's an ongoing thing, because today I'm praying that the Lord is doing something in you that you can also write in your story. But it's good for you, it's good for others to be able to read, and for those that you leave behind. when you leave this life, they need to know your testimony. Write your story. So this morning I want us to go to an interesting topic. We're going to call it signs and missed signs. Signs and missed signs. I'm going to ask you, have there been signs in your story, in your life, where the Lord just threw up a sign there to show you that He was God? Are there any things in your life that you can think back on to where it just stood out as a sign to let you know who God was and that He was in charge? I don't know. It could have been a dream. It could have been in a service. It could have been in a prayer time. It could have been in a quiet time. It could have been while you were hunting or fishing, or it could have been while you were just riding down the road. I don't know. It could have been looking at your newborn child or grandchild, or just a time that stands out in your mind as a time that God just revealed Himself to you. It kind of stands out as a sign in your life. You remember, you can point back to that day. I, some weird reason, can remember when I was 7 years old and I came to the altar and gave my heart to the Lord. I remember when I was 10 years old and the power of the Holy Spirit moved in me and moved into me and overflowed my life. And no, I've not been perfect since then, but I will be one day when I get to heaven. But the Lord is still working on me. But I remember those times. I remember when God called me to preach, and when I was just a young teenager, calling my dad, waking my dad one morning, way in the wee hours of the morning, and saying, "Dad, come, I want to talk to you." And he and I sat in our living room, and I told him that there was a calling on my life. God was calling me into the ministry. Wow. There's so many signs that God revealed Himself to me in different times with my children. And I don't know. I was thinking this morning when I was in the parking lot around daylight, I was thinking about the time that I was in Africa and witnessed an angel that didn't look like an angel and didn't look like what I would have expected an angel to be, but how it disappeared afterwards. And we'll tell that story another day, and some of you may remember me telling that. But I believe with all my heart that I encountered an angel in Africa back in the late 90s. There are signs in our life that stand out to us. Jesus came to this earth and He began to work miracles, or you could call it signs. And it was not that He was just going along checking off the list of all the things He wanted to do while He was here. But it was as He walked along and there were needs that were there in the lives of people, He met those needs, worked miracles, and put signs there, if you will, in their life to stand out to them, to remind them constantly of that event and the glory of God that was revealed to them. We have 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. We all know those. But there are 3 synoptic Gospels. Those 3 synoptic Gospels are Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Matthew, Mark, and Luke basically tells the same stories in different fashions. There's some left out, but it's from 3 different viewpoints, and it's basically the same stories. But John has come along. John has written his book with stories, a lot of which are not in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Did you know that? So John is one of the 4 Gospels, but not necessarily one of the synoptic Gospels, because he's telling stories that are not the same as the others. And John describes the miracles that Jesus did that he's writing about as signs. And basically, John realized, I believe, that Matthew, Mark, and Luke were picking up around the time of John the Baptist's arrest and telling all that Jesus did afterwards. And then John come along, and he's going to cover the miracles that were done up to John the Baptist's arrest, basically. So he's setting up a series of signposts to take us through to tell us his story and his understanding of what Jesus did while he was here. These signs are the occasions of which Jesus worked and showed his glory. They are moments in which it seemed that the heavens opened and the transforming power of God's love burst into the presence of the world. That moment when you feel like your hair stands up on your head and your arms, you got chills all over you, when you just feel the presence of God so real. I believe that was a lot of what happened during these signs. The whole point of the signs is that they are moments when heaven and earth intersect. And one person said it like this: when heaven and earth kissed, and we were caught right in the middle of the smack. I love that. I want you to go with me to the book of John chapter 2, verse 11, and let's see the sign that he first mentions. John chapter 2, verse 11. This, we'll talk about what that is in a moment, but the first of his signs. You know what the first miracle was that Jesus did? All right, I know you're too bashful with me. The first of his signs, Jesus did at Cana in Galilee. Look at the scripture. And manifested his glory. What we know as the story of the turning of the water into wine only seem like that, but John says it's the manifestation of his glory. And his disciples believed in him. So let's think for a moment. There's a wedding. You know the story. There's a wedding. Jesus has been invited to the wedding. His mother Mary has been invited to the wedding. The disciples are there, and there are others. Matter of fact, there's a whole lot of people at the wedding. I was invited to go and officiate Preston and Trish's wedding, and he said it's just a few people. Just very few people, and I'm thinking just a few people. We get there, there's people everywhere. At Aldersgate. And it's a beautiful wedding, but this is kind of what was going on here in Jesus' day. There's a whole crowd that comes to the wedding, so much so that they run out of wine to serve the people at the wedding. You can imagine how embarrassing that would be. This family is humiliated. You know, what are we going to do? We run out of wine. It's like having a wedding cake that wasn't big enough, or not enough punch, or whatever at the wedding. So these people are about to be totally humiliated, embarrassed, and Mary comes to Jesus and says, "Hey, they're out of wine." And Jesus looks at her and he says, "Woman, what have I got to do with you? What is this to me? You know, why are you bringing me into this?" Sometimes I wonder if the messes in my life that I've asked Jesus to come and fix, if he didn't say, "Why? What have I got to do with this?" Now, you know what I'm talking about. You got the same mess in your life. Right? But then Mary looks at the servants and she says, "Whatever he tells you to do not forget these words right here that I'm telling you." She says to them, "Whatever he tells you to do it." Put that in your mind as one of the main mottos, main things you've got in your memory. If Jesus tells you to do something, do it. So she told the servants this, so the servants looked at him, and there are 6 water jars there, and I did some calculating, and those water jars, 6 jars filled with water, would have held approximately 130 to 150 gallons of water. So Jesus tells the servants to go fill these 6 water jars with water. Well, the crowd's going to drink water now, so it seemed, and they fill the jars with water. It's not like you running to your faucet, and nowadays you can just speak to the faucet and pour water out over how much you want. You've seen those advertised. It wasn't like that. They had to go and draw the water probably and bring it in, and they got it in. They finally go through the whole process. Then Jesus says, "Take some of this water and go give it to the master of ceremony." You gotta be kidding me. He's complaining now because we don't have water, don't have wine, and taking the master of ceremonies, and he takes that wine, what appears to be just a trick. It's actually a miracle, but it's actually more than a miracle. It is a manifestation of the presence of God. It's a manifestation of Jesus Christ himself. The man, the master of ceremony, takes the wine and drinks it, and he says, "What is this? You are supposed to serve the best wine at the beginning of the wedding, and then when everybody has well drank, then serve the cheap stuff. But instead, you've saved the best wine to last." There's a whole lot of preaching in that, a whole lot of theology, I believe, going on that we'll never get covered today. But then John says, this was the first of his signs. In John chapter 2:11. Manifested his glory there. But do you see that last part? The disciples believed in him. Well, these are the guys that were fishing. And Jesus walked by them and said, "Come follow me." They left their fish, their net, their boats, the lake. They left everything to go follow Jesus. Or are they just hunting someone to follow? Or there's something about their call. There's a tax collector who is collecting taxes, who's doing his work, and Jesus walks by him and says, "Come and follow me." And he gets up and goes and follows Jesus. Well, what's going on? Don't these guys believe in Jesus? But once they tasted that wine, which they knew came from the well that held water, and now it's wine, the best wine, the disciples believed in him. The sign, the miracle, prevented a family shame from being spread all over because they ran out of wine. And although the present story portrays Jesus as clearly able to meet people's needs, the focus of the story is not on those, but on Jesus. Because all of a sudden, instead of being at all about how good the wine is, it's this man that turned the water into wine. There's something about him. There's something greater about him than about the wine. This story is a transformation. It's about a transformation, a different dimension of reality that comes into being when Jesus is present and when, as Mary tells the servants, people do what Jesus says to do. It changes everything. The transformation from water to wine is, of course, meant by John to signify the effect that Jesus can have and can still have today on the lives of people. The highway patrol was sitting on the side of the road, and there comes a car down the road that is obviously driven by someone who is slightly intoxicated. The highway patrolman turns the light on, and he goes and he pulls the car over. And when he pulls the car over, the guy is about lit. And the highway patrolman looks in the window and says, "Sir, what is that in the seat beside you?" And he said, "Sir, there's a bottle." He said, "What is in that bottle?" He said, "Sir, that's water in that bottle." And the highway patrolman said, "Let me see that bottle. I want to smell that bottle." And he takes that bottle and sniffs it and realizes that it is not water. And he says to that guy, "Sir, this is not water in this bottle. This is wine in this bottle." And that guy, nearly drunk, said, "Praise God, he'd have done it again." Let me tell you, last night, I went to Righteous Oaks Recovery. You know what that is? There's a bunch of guys that are in recovery from alcohol and drug abuse. And I preached the same message, and I told them the same story. And as the guys are just laughing about that story, I hear one of them right over here say, "I'm going to use it next time." The rest of you do that. In John, a sign is more than just a wonder. It is a powerful act for the one who has eyes to see, because it points to the reality of Jesus and who Jesus really is. Right? There he revealed his glory. And that may be rendered as somehow or another, he showed those people on that day how wonderful he was. This guy is not just a guy from Nazareth. He's not just a carpenter. But in that moment, they realized who Jesus was. The final clause of this verse, his disciples believed in him, may also be interpreted as, therefore his disciples not only believed in him, but they came to trust him. Now that's something right there. Because these guys have been following Jesus without working. No fishing, no tax collecting, no paychecks. So here they begin to trust Jesus. If he can turn water into wine, he can do anything. So when the taxes come due, Peter goes to Jesus, and Jesus says, go fishing, and in the fish's mouth you'll find the tax money. Right? When there's hungry people and Jesus says, feed them, and the disciple says, where can we go? There's not enough places around here to feed him. Everything is closed because of COVID. We only got carry out, right? You know what I'm saying? They didn't say that exactly, but they know that the same man that turned water into wine can take these few fish. I just believe when the little boy turned over his fish and loaves to Jesus, the disciples just said, let's watch this. Sit back and watch. They had come to trust him because they had seen the sign. What sign have you seen in your life that led you to believe in Jesus Christ? What has he done in your life? Put it in your story. Write it down before you forget it. All right? Because you're getting older, and as we get older, we forget more and more, right? My grandmother says, my forgetter works better than anything I got. Write it down. What are the signs in your life that Jesus has done that made you realize that I can trust him? I can put my trust in him. I can put my confidence in him. I can tell him anything. I can ask him for help in anything. In my health, in my finances, in my relationships, in all of my situations. I can ask him to help because he can do miracles. There's something special about this man.
Yes.
And therefore, we believe. What about those signs? I could stand here all morning and tell you of signs that I've seen in my life. I was telling the guys again last night about how that on April the 18th of 2006, I lay across my bed fully intending to never get out of that bed unless God touched my life. And in that night, God spoke to my heart and said, be still and know that I'm God. I remember the day, I remember the time. Every time I ride by that apartment, I remember it. I know God spoke to my heart that day. That night, my life began to change. Because I got to the place where I had to have God. That was a sign in my life. I'll never forget it. And from that night, listen, God gave me a new job within just a few days. God worked miracles in my life over and over again. And even to where I am standing right now has all been a part of God just saying, be still and know that I am God. If you don't fully understand that, I'll interpret it into more of our language, and that is, sit down, shut up, let God do what he's wanting to do. So, how many times have we seen those signs? We won't go there now, but in John 11:40, Jesus said, if you would believe, you would see the glory of God. If you would believe, I'm going to tell you, some of you know what God has done. You've seen that in your story. Where is your belief? Where is your faith? Interestingly enough, this verse, in 11th verse, it led to their faith, even though they believed already, but it says his disciples believed on him. It is just faith on top of faith, building one on top of the other. But then as we think back over our story in our life, we run across some missed signs. Right? We run across some missed signs. So, I don't know if I can give out all this this private information, but Thursday night, my wife and I were invited to go down and have dinner with the Haywoods and Pop Bill. After we left there, and it's way off down there, there's no need me trying to tell you how to get there, but it is way down there, and they told us how close we were to Highway 514. Does anybody know where Highway 514 is? Okay, we get down, we're told that we can go down and get on 514. I've been on 514 a lot of times, I've driven that a lot of times, I know where it goes, and I know that it goes straight to 145, and then crosses 145, and then goes over to Highway 45, the 4-lane. I know this is down in Clark County. So we leave their house a little after 8, and we're driving, and we're told to be careful, watch for deer. We watch for deer, you know, and all this good stuff. Don't see a deer, but we meet a few cars. And I'm traveling 514, and I'm knowing that we're nearing the intersection, and I see the sign that says "Stop ahead." Or gives that impression, and I get there. I know, you know what an intersection is, right? You know what an intersection is. It does this number right here. This is an intersection. You got a road coming this way, you got a road going this way. So I'm approaching the intersection of 514 and 145, and I know it carries on another side, and I just get up there and I just start going across the road. 145. And I got a co-pilot with me. Do you see a sign? Can you see a sign? And it was dark, mind you. Do you see the sign now? This is the sign. I couldn't see it. I didn't see it. So I'm in my Jeep. In my Jeep, I can go anywhere I want to go. It's four-wheel drive, and it can get dirty. So I know I can go anywhere I want to go. So I'm about halfway across Highway 145. There's supposed to be an intersection that goes, you know, and the road goes straight across. But instead, this intersection is kind of offset. So they've got 514 picking up over here, and I'm coming out here, but I don't see that sign. So I'm pulling up onto Highway 145. Carol says, well, then you do this. And I get up on 145, and I'm about to go to the edge of 145, knowing there's supposed to be a road there. I see lights, I see the church, Union Baptist Church, all these. I know that I can go across there. This is 514. I've done this before. I know what I'm doing. And I get up there, and she says, I don't think you can do this. And you do know we're waiting on her to have eye surgery, right? Okay, they're going to do an iris implant on her, burning out whenever they get all of the I's dotted and T's crossed. So she's sitting there giving me instructions. Guys, you ever driven with a woman? I love her to death. Anyway. We're sitting in the middle of Highway 145, and I'm moving on toward what is also known as a ditch. And she says, you can't do that. You can't do that. And then she has the nerve to say, and I'm the one that needs eye surgery. Talking about herself. And all of that humiliation, because I didn't see the sign. I missed the sign. So as I put it in reverse, thank God there was no traffic coming, but as I put it in reverse and I'm backing up, guess what I saw? It's a little off to the side, but I saw the sign. What signs have we missed in our life? Where God was trying to show us something, but instead, we've missed it. Think back in your life. Think back right now. We're gonna let you do that right this minute. What are the signs that you have run up on in your life where God was trying to reveal to you His glory, His manifestation, something He was trying to warn you of, tell you about, show you who He was, but instead you missed the sign? I want you to go with me a little further down in chapter 2 of John. John chapter 2, verse 19. Jesus answered them, look at this, destroy this temple and in 3 days I'll raise it up. So, there's a whole lot of people, and you know how they did Jesus when He was on the earth. I mean, they were constantly trying to trick Him, trying to get Him to say something or do something that they could catch Him for. They were all trying to kill Him. And He answers them here, and He said, you destroy this temple, and in 3 days I'll raise it up. Well, interestingly enough, the temple, the house of worship that was there, the temple itself, was standing there in enormous in beauty and glory. And He says to them, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I'll raise it up. The sad part was they missed the sign of what Jesus was saying. They missed the sign. Look at verse 20. The Jews then said, it's taken us 46 years to build the temple. And you say you're going to raise it up in 3 days? How are you going to raise it up in 3 days? And it took us 46 years to build this. There's no way. So they began to use that, but they missed something. They missed the sign. They missed the fact that He's not talking about the glorious worship center, but instead Himself. Verse 21. He was speaking about the temple of His body. And here He was trying to give these people a sign. The bad thing about it comes up here in verse 22 when we realize that His disciples missed the sign. They didn't realize what He was talking about. These who had seen Him turn water into wine did not realize that Jesus was talking about His own body. When therefore He was raised from the dead, after the crucifixion, after the burial, after the resurrection, they realized, that's what He was talking about the day when He was walking by the temple, when He said, destroy this body and I'll raise it in 3 days. Where was their minds when He was there? He was Jesus. He was in the Spirit, talking to them in the Spirit. I mean, they should have been understanding, and they missed this sign. Jesus is trying to tell them, and then a while later, they're coming to arrest Jesus. They're going to kill Him. And Peter jumps up and cuts the ear of the man off that's coming to arrest Him. Peter, don't you understand that you missed the sign? Peter, did you miss a sign? And then Jesus has told them that all of you are going to be offended of me this night. One's going to betray me. All of you are going to be offended of me. We're not going to do that. We've been by your side. We've seen you do all this stuff. We're yours. How can you say that when you even missed what He said back when He was trying to talk about the resurrection? You missed it. So Judas betrays Him. And then Peter, he's Peter. And he's like, I'm Peter. I'm Cephas. Remember? I am the little stone. Remember? I'm not going to deny you. Though all of these others deny you and walk away from you, I'm not going to deny you. I'm going to be by you. I'm going to be right by your side. You can depend on me. Those are always the first to go, right? I'm going to be right by your side. You can depend on me. I will never leave you. I will always be there. And Jesus, I like to think of it as saying, shut up, Peter. Before the rooster crows tonight, you will have denied me 3 times. Oh, not me. They missed the sign. They carried Jesus off to trial. Peter denied Him 3 times. The rooster crowed. He went out, wept bitterly. Judas went and hung himself. And the disciples, they're scattered. I mean, it's a mess. They missed the sign. Had they realized fully what He was talking about, do you suppose they would have gone to the tomb and waited 3 days counting time, watching the sun died. But instead, they'd all separated and gone their own way. And Jesus was crucified, buried, and on the third day he rose. And after that, look at verse 22. When he was raised from the dead, his disciples remembered that he had said this. And they believed. They missed a sign. Do you see what I'm saying? They missed a sign. Now I want you to know one of those disciples is writing this book. And he's writing it many years after the resurrection and the ascension and after the church is well on its way. John is writing this story so that everybody will know the story and so that you and I will have it this morning. So he's writing that we missed a sign. He writes his book in the third person, okay? And you read John, and we talked about that a few weeks ago, but you read that, you'll realize that he's in the disciples here when he's talking about his disciples remembered what he had said way back. So right now, if you'll listen, the Holy Spirit will remind you of things you've missed in your life where God was trying to reveal himself to you. Think about it. Where was it? You know, I told the guys last night, I didn't tell it at the first service this morning, but I told the guys last night, there were signs, this will take too long to tell, but Brooks, when he was sitting in high school, all of a sudden he began to hurt in his chest. They gave him a Rolaids. The teacher gave him a Rolaids because he was hurting in his chest, and then wound up, long story short, his lung had collapsed, and he spent days, weeks in the hospital here at Anderson, and had all kinds of surgeries, and he recovered from that, and within 6 weeks he was playing baseball again. He was about 14 at that age, at that time, but 5 years later, his life was taken in a car crash. And I've stood back and I've wondered, did I miss a sign that God was trying to show me something when I was a younger father and had a son 14 years old that we almost lost because of a collapsed lung? I wonder about signs that I missed in my life. If you will think back this morning, the Holy Spirit is working to remind you of times that He has tried to reveal to you just who God was and what God wanted in your life and wanted to do in you. The disciples realized it. But look how far down it was. By this time, Jesus had already died and risen. The guy was on the roof, roofing his house. It was a steep roof. And all of a sudden, he lost traction and he began to slide down the roof of his house. And all the way down, he's praying, "Help me, Lord, help me, Lord, help me, Lord, help me, Lord," you know, screaming, "Lord, help me, Lord, help me." And he's sliding because it's a long way to the ground. And just before he gets to the edge of his house, there's a nail sticking up, and his pants catches on the nail. And as it catches him, he says, "Never mind, Lord, there's a nail there." How many times have we done the same thing? We prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed about things, and God has worked miracles in our life, but instead we gave the credit to somebody else. We never recognized what God did. We missed a sign. What about the sign in your life? What about the signs there? By His mercy and grace, He brought you to places in your life and showed you signs of His love and mercy and grace. Now this morning, there's a sign here to remind you of what God has done in your life for you. Was He trying to reveal Himself to you? I'm 56 years old now, but I look back, I know you don't believe it, but I look back and I think how many times in my life has God tried to show me more of Him, more about Him. The older I get, I'm thinking, Lord, I just want to know you more. I'm kind of like Paul, who knew so much about the Lord, and he said, that I may know Him. I'm kind of in that place, Lord, I want to know you more. We used to sing the song, I want to know more about my Lord, and I'm kind of in that place, and I'm looking back over my life, and I'm thinking of the wasted time. What I should have been doing when I was doing something else. Lord, the time that I wasted. Were there signs there that I missed because I was so entangled in the world? The disciples were so entangled in what the people were saying about the temple taking 46 years to build. Was He trying to warn us of something? Was He looking back? Do we remember those signs? Have we missed signs? Yesterday, in our prayer meeting at 9 o'clock, and we do that every Saturday morning, and you're invited to come and join us here and pray with us on Saturdays at 9 o'clock from 9 till 10. But yesterday I was walking the platform praying with this message on my mind, and I'm saying, Lord, what signs are we missing right now? What signs are we missing today, right now? I began to think back in January when I began to preach on the move of God. You can go back, and Stephen was reminding me that you can go back to Facebook and you can look back in January or early part of January. Basically, all through January, we preached about a move of God, and there is a move, and God is moving, and we sang that song, There is a Move, over and over again, and just with such high expectations coming into this year. And then I take off to Honduras on a mission trip. While I'm gone, y'all, the whole place will crazy. You start fighting over toilet paper here, and we're in Honduras doing missions, and we get back to this. And on the way back from Jackson, on that night after we've flown in, Stephen tells me the churches in Meridian are closing down, and I'm like, what happened to the move of God? You know, what's happening? And we closed down for like 3 months. What's happening, God? And we're looking, and there was a time that there was no one in our church, no one from our church, basically, that was sick. And now we've had so many people with COVID, and so many people that's got COVID, and so many people that's in quarantine, and it's put our church through this trying time. And all of us, not just our church, but every church. So we're having this over and over again. And I'm like, God, are we missing something? It was just like God said, I'm moving. I'm moving. What are we missing today, church? We went into quarantine in, what was it, late March, April? We went into quarantine, and we were saying this is a time that we can grow closer to God, And I told you on video when I sat and preached to an iPad for 3 months, and my wife and Wolo, and I told you over and again that there's part of the church that's taking this as a time to grow closer to the Lord, but there's another part of the church that seems to be taking a vacation from God. I'm saying, God, are we missing a sign? Are we missing signs here? What are we doing? Are you moving? I want to see it. What about with all of this political stuff that's going on in our world today, in our country today? What about this? Are we missing signs? God is moving. I stepped back and I began to think of what I knew for a fact that God was doing in our church. The people that God is touching their lives, the miracles that are happening here and there, and things that I'll not get into this morning, but God is working miracles in lives of people. But we listen to those that said it took us 46 years to build this. listening to them that tell us how bad it is. Yes, there are people that are suffering. Yes, there are people that are sick. But I want you to tune into heaven, because there's a sign that God's trying to give us, that God's trying to reveal to us His glory. We're not the first ones to have a plague. We're not the first ones to go through political chaos. Lord willing, next Sunday we're going to preach about what happened to one guy in the middle of political chaos. What about the signs? Can you see the signs? Jacob, tired and weary from his journey, lay down and put his head on a stone and went to sleep. In the sleep, he had a dream, and there was a ladder stretched from heaven to earth, and there were angels that were going up and down. It was just the glory of God, the glorious sight. And Jacob woke up and he said, God was in this place and I didn't even know it. Because it didn't look like a place God could be in. I'm going to tell you something. God's in 2020. God's in right now. God's in this political chaos. God is in this health crisis. And God's in it. We just got to look for the sign. Jacob said God was here. I didn't even know it. I missed the sign. But the very next time we find Jacob and God together, Jacob has separated himself from everybody. And he says, I'm going to go behind that sign. And all night long he wrestled with God. And he said, I have seen God face to face. If you really want to see a sign bad enough, you'll get along with God. It is obvious that the miracle at Cana and the crucifixion were no glorious acts to many of the observers who were watching. There are no hints even that the servants at Cana filled the jars with water, saw the glory of what Jesus did. Only the disciples believed. Don't miss the sign of what is happening right now in your life. Will you just stand with me? Don't miss the sign of what God is doing right now in your life. Some of you are in some interesting times in your life, but know everybody around us is, we're in interesting times, but God's putting up signs. Here's one today. God's putting up a sign today. Don't miss it. God, I ask you this morning to open our eyes to what you're doing right now. God, we look back and we see so many signs that you tried to show us that we missed. Don't let us miss what you are doing today. Lord, don't let us miss what you're doing in this season that we're in right now. I know you're moving. I know you're working. And I see your hand at work in so many areas. Don't let us miss the sign. Don't let us miss the manifestation of your glory by being so caught up in what's going on around us. This sign could be what strengthens our faith to hold on. It could be what causes us to have a rock-solid faith in Jesus Christ. Don't ignore the sign. Don't ignore the sign. God, help us to see that sign. I want you to just be in a spirit of prayer. The altar is open. If you want to come here and pray, Because the Lord is opening your eyes to things that you have overlooked. This is all a part of your story, and it's all a part of you seeing the glory of God. Don't miss it. Don't miss it. Holy Spirit. The worship team is going to sing. The altar is open. I'd love to pray with you. Don't be in such a hurry you miss the sign. Holy Spirit. Holy Spirit.
I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me. And all my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up till I lay my head, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so good. Every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire in the darkest times. You are close like no other. I know you as a father. I know you as a friend. And I have lived in the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so good. Every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. My life laid down, surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Yeah. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down and surrender now, I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. All my life you have been faithful. Yes, you have. All my life you have been so good. Every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Father, we'll sing of your goodness. We'll praise you. We'll lift your name up, Father. Father, you said, for I know the plans that I have for you. Father, you have plans for us to prosper us, Father. Lord, and to lead us into a bright future. Father, let us remember the signs of the past, Father, that we didn't see before. Thank you for the word that you brought through Pastor Gary. Lord, thank you for, Lord, just allowing us to be able to take in the meat of your shine upon them, Father. Or that they may know who you are and whose they are and belong to the kingdom. In Christ's name we pray.